For those of you that love talking about animals, from Sci News, saber-toothed Thylacolsmilus had very weak bite, new study shows. Thylacolsmilus atrox, an extinct bizarre marsupial superpredator that roamed South America about 4 to 3 million years ago, had huge saber-like teeth, but its bite was weaker than that of a domestic cat. And now, from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. Welcome to Creature Guide Live Prehistoric News. Let's dive right back into the prehistoric news of the day. So for a second there, I was a bit concerned because I'm thinking, whoa, whoa, there are around 5 different species of Thylacolsmilus that have been discovered, and the largest could reach over 330 pounds, around the size of a big jaguar. And I'm thinking, hold on, as a bite as weak as that of a domestic cat. However, it said atrox, which is one of the smaller species of Thylacolsmilus. We're talking about an animal that reached somewhere around 90 pounds. So that makes much more sense. Now, this animal is
Still
also
90 pounds.
yeah, it is much smaller, but there have been much larger decreases in bite force compared to body size when looking at certain carnivores. Even looking at certain species of predatory dinosaurs with very thin, narrow jaws, that actually happens quite often. They didn't have strong bite forces, so they made up in very sharp teeth. Now, despite this animal having extremely long canines, it is not a close relative of any of the true saber-toothed cats. In fact, this is not a cat at all. It is a marsupial, and cats are placentals.
What about
So,
the saber-toothed tiger in Ice Age?
um, well, it was odd that they called themselves saber-toothed tigers anyway, but those
Why?
well, they didn't have stripes, but um they um it was a mixture of technically Smilodon and Barbarophilis within the movie Ice Age. I think like the leader of that pack looked more of like just a huge Smilodon, probably referring to Smilodon populator. And then there was Diego, who's actually a Barbarophilis, which is also not a marsupial like this individual. It's actually a closer relative of Smilodon compared to Thylacolsmilus.
What's a saber-toothed tiger look like?
There is no such thing as a saber-toothed tiger. So tigers and saber-toothed cats are not closely related. Um, but it is interesting also with this individual, you can see that they gave it a gum, which was not usually present in former drawings of saber-toothed predators. Now, what's also interesting is in the background, you have other South American animals. So this is taking place in Argentina towards the end of the Pliocene epoch, and this is shortly before the major ice age. You have Toxodon in the background, which would survive until the very end of the Pleistocene epoch or ice age around 12,000 years ago. And then here is a mysterious species of Glyptodon, so virtually a very large armadillo. They're very closely related to armadillos of today. So let's keep looking. Very likely, this animal is not preying on either of these herbivores. Toxodon could
That's a
reach
big-looking armadillo.
Um, yeah, whatever glyptodont that is, I'm guessing he weighs at least 200 pounds.
How large do glyptodons get?
Large glyptodont could weigh probably around 3,000 pounds. Now, Toxodon in the background, these relatives of tapirs, hippos, they could reach somewhere between 3 to 4,000 pounds. Um, okay. Thylacolsmilus looked and behaved like nothing alive today. To achieve a kill, the animal must have secured and immobilized large prey using its extremely powerful forearms before inserting the saber teeth into the windpipe or major arteries of the neck. A mix of brute force and delicate precision. The iconic North American saber-toothed tiger. Oh, come on! You had to use that term. Smilodon fatalis is often regarded as the archetypal mammalian superpredator. Okay, so when looking at the names of today's tiger and then the famous saber-toothed cat, you have Smilodon fatalis, so the famous North American saber-toothed cat, and then you have Panthera tigris, the tiger of today. So, Also, it's not the largest mammalian cat to have ever evolved. The American lion was larger. I believe the cave lion was close to the same size. And then the South American species, Smilodon populator, was much larger. Also, Barborophilis was possibly larger than Smilodon as well. So, however, Smilodon, a true cat, was just the endpoint in a one of at least five independent experiments in saber-toothed evolution through the age of mammals, which spans some 65 million years. Um, well, technically 66, but the thing is that when it comes to Smilodon, I was just having to reread that. Smilodon, first of all, hasn't really evolved yet. I mean, this is in the, what, 3 to 4 million years ago during the Pliocene, and he won't pop up until somewhere around 2 million years ago. So it won't be for possibly another 2 million years that he doesn't evolve for. Thylacosmilus atrox is the best preserved species of one of these evolutionary lines, pouched saber-tooths that, oh, it's saying pouched because it was a marsupial. Saber-tooths that terrorized South America until around 3.5 million years ago. For its
Whoa,
size,
whoa, it's saying this cat was a marsupial?
I mean, well, I might have said that it's the cat. No cat is a marsupial. They're all placentals. But yes, this saber tooth it belongs to a family of marsupials called the Thylacosmilids, and they first evolved somewhere around 28 million years ago, and would mysteriously disappear just before the ice age would appear. So around 3 million years ago. It says 3.5.
I'm not reading it. I just heard what you said. I'm thinking, wait, what?
No, it's not a cat. For its size. Now, what is interesting is also cats happen to evolve around that time too, towards the end of the Oligocene epoch. Or, well, actually, that's I wouldn't call that the end. I would say that's towards like the actually earlier stages. So let's see. For its size, its huge canine teeth were larger than those of any other known saber tooth. Yes, Lactosmilus did have one of the largest saber teeth at that point. That's also excluding like the much earlier Gorgonopsians of the Permian, when it's just referring to true mammals. Smilodon's killing behavior has long attracted controversy, but paleontologists now mostly agree that powerful neck muscles as well as jaw muscles play an important role in driving the saber tooth into the necks of large prey. Little was known about the predatory behavior in the pouch Thylacolesmilus. Well, you're also comparing, even when you're looking at the smaller Smilodon species, which was probably around somewhere between 2 to 300 pounds, much larger than this species of Thylacosmilus. And it lived in Florida, much of the southeastern United States during the Ice Age. So this was also after Thylacosmilus. Its bite force would have been much larger, so I just don't think it would be good to compare it with that. However, both animals did have quite a weak sort of jaw structure. Now, taking a look at an animal that lived earlier during the Miocene epoch. So this was around 17 million years ago in South America, and this is Astrapotherium. It is a huge debate as to what order of mammal it belongs to. It does belong to the Astrapotheridae lineage of herbivorous mammals, and it most likely had a bit of a tapir like lifestyle. And what's interesting is that it does have a rhinoceratid, so like rhinos today, sort of dental structure to it. Now, different rhino species today feed on different species of vegetation. Like if you look at a Sumatra rhino and compare it to a white rhino over in Africa, they're feeding, well, Sumatra rhinos, they're feeding mostly on leaves. Oh, and white rhinos are feeding mostly on grasses, occasionally shrubs.
This guy looks like he could be a carnivore.
Yeah, he does look like that. I mean, when you look at most herbivores or mammalian herbivores, occasionally you will find them feeding on bone and sometimes even flesh. It's usually when they're simply lacking on protein, calcium, phosphorus sometimes. It might have been very much the same with Astrapotherium, but aside from that, he was very likely feeding on different species of grasses, maybe even certain species of leaves. though he would have had a somewhat trunk-like a tapir. And here is Thylacolsmilus. Now, I think this might be a larger species, which could reach over 300 pounds and was feeding on much larger species of prey animals compared to Thylacolsmilus atrox, which I'm guessing it's very possible he was preying on animals close to his size. When you have these types of canines, which when connecting with the tissue correctly can very easily pierce the throats of most smaller animals. You don't need a very large bite force. The problem is when too much pressure is attributed to the skull, there can be, it could break.
I would think those gums would cause a massive problem for them when they're battling.
Um, uh, like for the teeth,
Yeah, at the bottom of their mouth.
I would just see it as a bit of a benefit when it comes to. Wait a second, are you talking about that area of bone or just the gum? Because the gum I would see is like helping to protect the teeth as well as keeping them
Yeah,
moist.
yeah, but the teeth. But when they're fighting another cat, I would think it'd be something they could bite onto.
Oh, I see what you're talking about. I'm guessing to an extent they probably have it where their mouths are slightly closed, and also that area right there. Oh, is solid bone. So, another Thylacolsmilus would not want to make contact with that area because if it did, it could very likely break its canines. So, they're smart enough to know, even though marsupials have smaller brains than placentals, so he would have a smaller brain than the Barbrophilids or, well, technically, also the Smilodons. They already know not to target that area. So most likely they're going to just try to target the neck of each other.
I still can't
So
get past the fact that they're marsupials.
yeah, it's very likely. Well, if you look at his face, you can somewhat see a bit of a kangaroo or a wombat sort of a look, despite him being in South America and being around earlier than like even the giant kangaroos or
I
certain
didn't even
wombat
realize that
forms.
till right before you said it.
Yeah, it does have Tasmanian devil. That's what wasn't hitting me originally. Um, and no, the Warner Brothers Tasmanian devil didn't exist. I actually wondered that for a long time, and I'm glad. Uh, so this guy, it's a really big question as to what the color of these animals could have been. Even the eye color, because it does differ depending on the mammal.
He doesn't have gums.
Oh, yeah, that is interesting. Also, the tooth seems to possibly be a bit out of range, but besides that, it's a decent drawing. The whiskers, I like that they gave it like a blue eye color, but also just the orange, grayish or light bluish texture on the fur. It looks good. Um, Now, yeah, despite the small bite force, this still, once it makes direct contact with the throat, it's a very efficient killer. So let's see. Dr. Rowe, with colleagues, constructed and compared sophisticated computer models of Smilodon and Thylacolsmilus, as well as a living conical toothed cat, the leopard. These models, well, it's not saying the specific species. I'm guessing. I would think that they're doing it with a clouded leopard because clouded leopards, they have the longest canines compared to their body size of any species of wild cat today. But maybe they're doing it with an African leopard. I'd honestly find that a bit odd. But anyway, let's keep going. Um, though an African leopard would be closer in size to Thylacolsmilus atrox. Snow leopards would be a bit larger. Anyway, the reason I say that is because clouded leopards only reach around 50 to 60 pounds. These models were digitally crash tested in simulations of biting and killing behavior. We found that both saber-tooth species were similar in possessing weak jaw muscle driven bites compared to the leopard. Leopards, even if you look at them as a whole, they do have a much more robust bite structure. Most carnivores say, even if you look at a cheetah, it has a much more robust bite force compared to something like the saber-toothed cats or the saber-toothed marsupials. So, despite all of the criticism that cheetahs get, They deserve some credit. Yeah, I know they're inbred. Anyway, but the mechanical performance of the saber-toothed skulls showed that they were both well adapted to resist forces generated by very powerful neck muscles. Um, okay, but compared to the placental Smilodon, Thylacus smilis was even more extreme. I mean, this does make sense. You still need a certain amount of force being driven into that bite. It's not just a delicate, I'm just going to hug you gently to death. But um, no, it's much worse. Let's see. Frankly, the jaw muscles of Thylacus smilis were embarrassing. With its jaws wide open, this 80 to 100 kilogram super predator had a bite less powerful than a domestic cat. Whoa, 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 whoa. Hold on. I thought we were just focusing on Aatrox. Are you saying with the larger species too? I mean, a cat can't hurt though, but never mind. On the other hand, its skull easily outperformed that of the placental Smilodon in response to strong forces among hypothetical neck muscles. That's interesting. It actually outdid the Smilodon. I thought Thylacus smilis was or would have been worse. That's interesting. I mean, it does have. Here's the thing, though. Thylacus malis, when you look at the skull, it is much wider than if you're looking at Smilodon. Look at that. It's even known as the chinless saber-toothed cat. Maybe that's part of the reason. That's just my guess. Now, looking at Smilodon, if you're looking at Smilodon fatalis, so this is the famous species. It's referred to as saber-toothed tiger, but it's not one. Uh, Interesting. They didn't give him any gums. Anyway, this animal could reach a little over 600 pounds, around 280 kilograms, and was it's a huge debate, and this is like recent times as to what the animal would have specifically been feeding on. It's changed from going after younger Columbian mammoths, which were much larger than woolly mammoths, younger mastodons, the ancient like longhorn woodland bison, to horses and camels. It's like seriously that immense amount of muscle on this animal, especially like around the forearms. Also, if you look at the back legs of Smilodon, okay, well that's hard to tell. They're much shorter compared to the forelimbs. This
I
is
was thinking spotted hyena.
Oh, yeah, they kind of have a somewhat similar characteristic, but it's more distinct in Smilodon. This is not something that you see in almost any cat today. They're pretty much aligned with each other. Actually, this is something that you see in like a Brachiosaurus, where the forelimbs um, are much longer compared to the hind limbs, but Brachiosaurus can't really run. This animal could, but it would have been a very short burst and probably couldn't run very fast either. Now, I'm not saying this animal couldn't reach a speed of 30 miles an hour, but it would have been short. Also, the much larger prey items, even the bison at the time, are going to be much larger and probably a lot slower than today's bison. So, it was simply relying on its brute strength. Now, where was I getting at? Oh, I just think that the whole just feeding on horses and camels is a bit exaggerated because it's just something with this amount of muscle. I would think would need to be feeding on something much more substantial, especially when it looks like that there's evidence for Smilodon hunting and prides. So, I think they were going after younger Colombian mammoths and bison. Okay. Bottom line is that the huge sabers of Thylacospinalus were driven home by the neck muscles alone, and because the saber teeth were actually quite fragile, this must have been achieved with surprising precision. I think it also would have been quite simple for animals like Smilodon, Thylacospinalus to make a direct bite on the animal because if when you look at cats today, it's almost like they purposely bite on certain other areas of the animal, knowing that it's not immediately going to take it down. But um, When they do bite the neck, though, you can notice that it actually takes quite a while to finally suffocate the animal. And I think with animals like Smilodon, Thylaxomylus, it would have been quick because the canines could immediately slice through. Why evolution decided, okay, now we're just going to give you shorter canines, but to make up for it, we're going to give you a larger bite force. You're going to need to hold on to the animal a bit longer. I don't understand it. Let's see. It may not have been the smartest of mammalian super predators, but in terms of specialization, Thylaxomylus took the already extreme saber-tooth lifestyle to a whole new level. Now, taking a last look at another animal that existed a bit earlier in time. This is Dinotherium. Actually, this could have been around the same time as Thylaxomylus. So, 3 million years ago, over in Kenya or even Ethiopia in Africa, we have also found specimens of them in Europe, certain parts of Asia. This is an early relative of the elephant. Yet it's not exactly a close relative. It's not even relatively close relative. The mammoths, the mastodons, so this individual could reach over 13 feet in height and probably weigh somewhere between 12 to 15 tons. It's probably living in small herds over in the grasslands and marshlands of East Africa back in the Pliocene epoch. And they used to be reconstructed with relatively short trunks. Actually, it was a bit of the actually what happened was in the 1800s. So Dinotherium was already known about back in the 1860s, and they were actually drawn with relatively long trunk. And then later in time, they started being reconstructed with a short trunk, and now it's well reverted back to a longer trunk. It's a big question as to what the tusks would have been used for because there's nothing really else like it within the elephant family. And there are also some around or there's over 7 different species of Dinotherium that have been discovered. So, yes, this was an herbivore. Despite its size, younger ones would have to be concerned about different species of saber-toothed cats in the different continents, maybe even different species of prehistoric hyenas. But when it came to the full grown ones, nothing could touch them. There are also early bears over in Africa at this time, too. Now, this Dinotherium, you can't tell, but he's probably standing somewhere around 13 to 14 feet within the museum. And let's see, what was another thing? They first evolved somewhere around 18, 15 to 18 million years ago during the Miocene epoch. But they would not make it to their family wouldn't merge and make animals such as like mammoths, mastodons. It's a big question as to why, but specifically those tusks. It is interesting because when you look at certain earlier relatives like the Platybolodon, which existed at around this time too. And if you're wondering, in the oceans, you would have had megalodon at the same time. The Platybolodon had a bit of a shovel-like tusk structure, which is still being extremely questioned as to what they would have been used for. In fact, before the mammoths and the mastodons evolved, even different species of gomphotherior elephant-like creatures, you had for some reason evolution took these types of steps, and it's just like why? Anyway, let me know in the comments what your favorite species of prehistoric mammal is. And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guy Live Daily News. Remember to like, comment, subscribe if you love talking about animals, and share this show with everyone you know because nothing is better than all animals all the time.